Is she the one that speaks English or the other one?
Yes. The other one, she's done the running.
Oh no! Ambulance, we've got two possible fatals. Can't believe two people have just done that in front of you.
They want to steal your organs, screams Sabine as she throws herself into rush hour traffic on a highway in England. Her sister follows suit. What unfolds is a surreal, almost bizarre scene of two twin sisters attempting to end their lives in front of the camera lens of a small film crew. But this is only the beginning of the mysterious case of Ursula and Sabine Eriksson, a case that would ultimately culminate in a horrifying crime. A shared delusional disorder, also known as folie deux, or shared psychotic disorder, involves the full or partial adoption of a delusional belief by a close, initially non-delusional partner. Social isolation is considered a significant risk factor for the development of this disorder. Sabina Eriksson and her identical twin sister Ursula Eriksson were born on November 3, 1967, in Värmland, Sweden. Värmland is known for its lakes and waterways, as well as its picturesque mountain scenery, which has often inspired painters and writers. The sisters had an older sister named Mona and an older brother named Bjorn. The Eriksson family was not well off and grew up in modest circumstances, which apparently led to the two girls being teased frequently. Not much is known about their childhood and adolescence. It is known, however, that by the year 2000, Ursula was living in the United States, while Sabina lived in Ireland. Sabina was married and had two children, meaning the twins lived separately, were exposed to different environments, and thus had distinct thought patterns. This point contradicts the earlier quote from the introduction, which mentions social isolation as a major risk factor for shared delusional disorders. In this case, social isolation did not apply, yet the situation still took an unusual turn. On Friday, May 16, 2008, Ursula arrived in Ireland to visit her sister after a long time apart. The exact reason for her visit is unknown. Nor is it clear why, shortly after Ursula greeted the family, the sisters secretly left the house and began a journey to Liverpool, England. Had they simply snuck out to visit a nearby pub to escape familial stress, catch up and indulge in nostalgia, one might not have read too much into their behavior. However, Liverpool is about 14 to 15 hours away by public transportation. Precisely how they got there remains unclear, though it is believed they used a combination of ferries and buses, as they arrived in Liverpool the next morning. From here, their plans grew even more peculiar. The first destination in Liverpool was the police station on St. Anne Street. There, they told the officers that Sabina's children in Ireland were in danger, but failed to provide specific details. The officers immediately contacted their colleagues in Ireland to investigate. The children were checked on and found to be safe. However, Sabina had argued with her husband the previous evening, the day before Ursula's arrival. When this information reached the officers at St. Anne Street, the sisters had already disappeared. They had booked tickets for a National Express bus to London, departing at 11:30 a.m. The next few hours of their journey would become even stranger, marked by a series of bizarre events worth recounting. The bizarre events began when the sisters suddenly insisted on getting off the bus because they felt unwell. This occurred at Keele Services, a motorway service station similar to a roadhouse in America, according to the bus driver, who was later questioned by the police. The route was analyzed by the authorities, revealing that no scheduled stop was planned at the location where the driver claimed to have dropped them off. However, the service station manager confirmed the driver's account. She also found Ursula and Sabina's behavior odd. They moved strangely and clung tightly to their luggage, giving the impression that they might be hiding something illegal. When asked to open their bags, the sisters refused. This prompted the manager to call the police.
911, what's
Shortly
your
thereafter,
emergency?
the police arrived and spoke with the sisters, but left the scene soon after, as the women seemed harmless. Surveillance cameras captured their next actions. From Kiel services, the two walked back onto the motorway, specifically along the central reservation between the opposing lanes of traffic. Eventually, they decided to cross to the other side. This caused a traffic disruption, as they paid no attention to the oncoming cars, simply walking across. During this reckless crossing, Sabina was struck by a seat Leon. Despite the impact, she got up and continued walking. The chaotic situation led to another call to the police, who quickly headed to the scene. Coincidentally, the responding police team was being accompanied by a small film crew and a presenter who were filming a segment for television about the Central Motorway Police Group, the unit responsible for such incidents. Footage from the crew shows an officer being interviewed in the foreground, while in the background, Sabina and Ursula can be seen talking to another officer and smoking. Suddenly, Ursula bolts onto the motorway, charging directly into oncoming traffic without paying attention to anything, except getting fatally hit. A police officer tries to grab her bag to stop her, but fails. Ursula is struck by a Mercedes traveling at nearly 90 kilometers per hour, or 56 miles per hour. As if this weren't shocking enough, Sabina also takes off and leaps onto the hood of a passing Volkswagen moving at a similar speed. Ursula's collision leaves her with both legs broken, rendering her immobile. Sabina is stuck so violently that she loses consciousness for at least 15 minutes. Miraculously, both sisters survive, despite being hit at such high speeds. An ambulance arrives within minutes. However, when responders attempt to place Ursula on a stretcher, she starts spitting, scratching, and verbally abusing the medical staff. To a police officer trying to calm her down, she declares, "I know you. I know you're not real." As though hearing her sister's words, Sabina regains consciousness and joins in the erratic behavior. "They're going to steal your organs," she screams. Surprisingly, she manages to stand and continues yelling. She calls for the police, seemingly unaware that they are already on the scene. Her movements suggest she's sustained no visible injuries. Sabina wanders a few meters away, and when a female officer tries to stop her from leaving, Sabina punches her in the face. The officer falls immediately, calling for backup. Sabina then plays a bizarre game of cat and mouse with the police, trying repeatedly to escape, even though she is on a long, straight road. Eventually, officers manage to subdue her, handcuffing her and administering a sedative. Because both sisters exhibited such strange and similar behavior, the officers suspected the use of illegal substances. They searched their belongings but found nothing, only several broken mobile phones. Ursula was airlifted to a hospital further away due to her severe injuries, while Sabina was transported to a nearby hospital. After some time, Sabina calmed down, though doctors found it odd that she showed no concern for her injuries or her sister. Believing Sabina was back under control, doctors discharged her into police custody 5 hours later. After all, she had assaulted a police officer. During questioning, Sabina confessed to the assault but cryptically added, "In Sweden, we say that an accident rarely comes alone. Usually, at least one more follows, maybe even two." Despite these unsettling remarks, the court did not request a psychological evaluation. Sabina's confession led to a one-day jail sentence, meaning no psychologist was involved. This was mainly because authorities, observing her calm and cooperative behavior during questioning and on video recordings, appeared to have overlooked the earlier incidents on the motorway and her assault on the officer. Admittedly, she appears very normal in the footage. She even jokes with the officers. Sabina served one night in jail before being released in Stoke-on-Trent, where the court proceedings had taken place. Carrying her belongings in a clear plastic bag, she wandered the narrow streets of the English city, searching for the hospital where her sister was being treated. Around 7 p.m., Sabina was seen walking with two men and a dog on Christchurch Street in the Fenton district. One of the men was 54-year-old Glenn Hollinshead, a self-employed mechanic and retired member of the English Air Force. The other man was his friend Peter Malloy. As Sabina walked past them, she noticed the dog and started petting it. The three struck up a conversation. Although Sabina was friendly, she also appeared nervous. Her body language made the two men suspicious. Sabina asked the men if they could recommend an affordable hotel or a place to stay for the night. Hollinshead immediately suggested that she should come to his house, as he lived just around the corner. This way, she wouldn't have to spend unnecessary money on a hotel. Sabina agreed, and the three headed to his home. On the way there, Sabina seemed to relax a bit. She told the two men about her sister, and that she was trying to find out which hospital she was in. However, once they arrived at the house and had a few drinks, her nervous behavior returned, this time even more pronounced. Sabina kept getting up and going to the window and looking out, as if she were being followed or expecting someone. Malloy assumed that she was fleeing from a violent husband, frightened and traumatized. He didn't judge her behavior because of this, but then things got even stranger. Sabina offered the men cigarettes, only to snatch them out of their hands moments later, claiming they were poisoned. "If you smoke these, you'll die," she said. Combined with her behavior at the window, she seemed increasingly paranoid. The two men interpreted her actions as the result of fleeing from a traumatic situation. Around midnight, Malloy left the house, leaving Sabina alone with Hollinshead. The next day around noon, Hollinshead called his brother, who worked in the medical field. He asked him to find out which hospital Ursula was in. His brother promised to look into it. Hollinshead and Sabina spent the day together, as he had offered her to stay until they knew more about her sister. What exactly they did that day remains unclear. However, at 7:40 p.m., Hollinshead went to his neighbor's house to borrow some tea. He returned to his home, but emerged just a few minutes later covered in blood. He approached his neighbor, who happened to be standing outside his door. At first, the neighbor couldn't believe what he was seeing, but as Hollinshead got closer, he realized that he was severely injured. "She stabbed me," Hollinshead said before collapsing. As he lay there, he asked his neighbor to take care of his dog. Just a few minutes later, Hollinshead succumbed to his injuries. He died at the spot where he collapsed, before a paramedic could treat him. The neighbor called the police, but Sabina had already fled the house. She was once again captured on security cameras. The footage shows her running through the streets of Stoke-on-Trent, repeatedly hitting herself on the head with a hammer, as if trying to wake herself from a nightmare. The case attracted significant media attention. A passing motorcyclist recognized Sabina and decided to intervene by knocking her down with his motorcycle to stop her and take the hammer away, but Sabina fought back. While the motorcyclist lay on the ground struggling with her, she pulled a brick out of her pocket and struck him on the back of the head. The motorcyclist lost consciousness. Fortunately, other people, including paramedics, were present at the scene. Another chase began. Sabina, unfamiliar with the city. Her flight ended at a bridge. Behind and in front of her were people who, at least from her perspective, meant her harm. She saw only one way out: jumping from the bridge onto the highway. Without hesitation or a moment's thought, she carried out her plan. Sabina jumped from the 12-meter-high bridge onto the A50 motorway. The impact broke both her ankles and fractured her skull. Sabina Eriksson was subsequently taken to a hospital and, of course, arrested. Before this video reaches its final phase, I'd like to ask you to leave a like or maybe even subscribe to my very young channel. I'm trying to present these events as carefully and thoroughly researched as possible. Alright, back to the video. Sometime after the incidents, a trial took place. Sabina was charged with murder under diminished responsibility and found guilty. When called to the witness stand and questioned about the events, she responded to every question with no comment. Her lawyer argued that she had been insane at the time of the crime. However, by the time of the trial, she had been rehabilitated and was capable of rational thought. The defense argued that Sabina had suffered from a psychiatric condition known as folie. This disorder, they claimed, had been triggered by her close relationship with her twin sister Ursula, who was seen as the instigator of the madness. The judge actually accepted this explanation and stated the following: "I understand that this verdict may be difficult for the bereaved to comprehend. However, I base my judgment on the mental state of the defendant at the time of the act, which diminished her responsibility. This verdict is neither intended to represent the grief of the family, nor to reflect the value of Mr. Hollinshead's life. No verdict I could deliver would adequately address this loss. Nevertheless, I hope this is a fair judgment for a tragic incident. Sabina suffered from delusions that she perceived as real and that dictated her actions. She was powerless to prevent the crime." Sabina was sentenced to 5 years in Bronzefield Women's Prison. After some time, Ursula returned to the United States. Due to her injuries, she was reliant on a wheelchair for an extended period. While there, she joined the Sacred Heart Church. According to the church's website, she was healed through prayer and her devotion to Christ. Sabina, on the other hand, was released after serving 5 years in prison. She now lives in Europe, specifically in Norway. Little is known about her life and activities today. And with that, we've reached the end of this bizarre case, a case that leaves many questions unanswered to this day. No one, except perhaps Sabina herself, knows why she killed Glenn Hollinshead, or why she and her sister even traveled to Liverpool. Even more mysterious and tragic is the disappearance of young Inga Gericke. The girl vanished within mere seconds without a trace, but what investigators uncovered during their search is shocking. Take care, and see you next time.